Stranded in a strange galaxy, he becomes the only man in a world of alien women. Liam Carter had always dreamed of exploring the stars. As a young boy, he would stare up at the night sky, imagining what lay beyond the twinkling lights that stretched far into the dark expanse. He had trained for years to become an astronaut, and now, in the midst of the greatest adventure of his life, Liam found himself stranded on an alien world, one he never imagined he would visit. The crash was sudden and violent. One moment, Liam had been making calculations for their entry into an uncharted galaxy. The next, the ship's systems had failed and everything had gone dark. The entire crew was lost. Liam alone survived, his escape pod flung far away from the wreckage of the starship. When he regained consciousness, he was no longer aboard the ship. Instead, he lay in the tall grass of an unfamiliar landscape. The air smelled fresh but tinged with a strange, floral scent. His body ached, but it was nothing compared to the feeling of disorientation. The sky was unlike anything he had seen before. Two suns hovered over the horizon, casting a golden light across the land. Liam tried to sit up, but the pain in his head made him dizzy. He groaned, squinting at the unfamiliar surroundings. Tall, slender trees stretched toward the sky, their leaves shimmering in shades of purple and blue. Everything was so different, alien. He attempted to stand but stumbled, falling back to the ground. A voice pierced through the haze of his thoughts. "Are you all right?" Liam's head snapped toward the source of the voice, and his heart skipped a beat. A group of beings approached him, alien women, their figures tall and elegant. They had long, flowing hair that shimmered in the sunlight, and their skin was a soft shade of green glowing faintly. Their eyes were wide and bright, but it was their expressions that caught Liam off guard. There was curiosity, awe, and something else, something unfamiliar. He tried to speak, but his throat was dry. Instead, he coughed and waved his hand in a gesture of reassurance. He felt weak, unsure of what was happening, but he knew he needed to keep calm. He was a trained astronaut. He could survive. This was just another challenge, another obstacle to overcome. "Who are you?" one of the women asked, her voice melodic and smooth. It was unlike any language Liam had ever heard, but somehow he understood. It was as if the words were being translated in his mind. I'm Liam," he stammered, struggling to get to his feet. His mind was racing. Where was he? How had he ended up here? The women exchanged glances, their confusion evident. It wasn't just Liam's presence that puzzled them. It was his appearance. They had never seen a being like him. Humans were a mystery to them, something they had heard about in ancient legends but never truly believed existed. The presence of a man on their planet was unheard of. Their society had been built without men for centuries. "We are the people of Nurun," one of the women said, stepping closer to him. Her eyes were soft, yet there was a certain strength in her gaze. "I am Amara, the Queen of Nurun. Welcome to our world." Liam's eyes widened in disbelief. A queen, he was on a planet ruled by women. His mind struggled to process the information. "Queen Amara." He started to speak, but stopped when he realized how dry his mouth was. Amara immediately noticed. "You are weak, you must rest," she said firmly. Her voice carried an authority that Liam couldn't ignore. "We will take you to the city. There you will be cared for." Before Liam could respond, the women carefully helped him to his feet and led him through the strange, vibrant landscape. As they walked, Liam couldn't help but marvel at the beauty of this world. The flowers in the fields shimmered with a soft glow, and the trees seemed to hum with life. The air was clean and crisp, filled with the scent of alien blossoms. But the most striking thing of all was the complete absence of men. Everything about this planet was foreign, and Liam couldn't shake the feeling that he had somehow become a symbol of something they didn't quite understand. His presence was unsettling, yet it was also a mystery, something these women could not ignore. They arrived at the city, Nurun's capital. It was a towering structure of gleaming white stone and silver, a place that seemed to exist between ancient tradition and futuristic technology. The streets were wide, and the buildings rose high into the sky. Yet despite the advanced technology, there was a calmness to the city, a stillness that spoke of peace, or perhaps isolation. The women took Liam to a large hall at the center of the city, where he was greeted by the rest of the council. Queen Amara explained who he was and what had happened, though the women's faces were still full of questions. The idea of a man, especially a human, being on their planet was something no one had anticipated, but they listened. They were intrigued, and their curiosity only grew. Liam, Queen Amara said softly after the others had left. She motioned for him to sit. Your arrival has brought something to the surface we have not faced in a long time. Men have been absent from Nurun for centuries. The history of our people is one of loss and survival. The absence of men was never questioned, until now. Liam listened carefully. This was more than just an accidental crash. There was history here, a history he needed to understand if he was going to survive on this strange world. These women had lived without men for generations, and now he was here, alone and out of place. But could he remain out of place for long? How would they react to him in the long run? You said men were lost, Liam asked carefully. What happened? Queen Amara looked down, a flicker of sadness in her eyes. Long ago there was war, a great conflict that wiped out our male population. Since then we have lived without them. But now, with your arrival, things are changing. There are whispers among my people. Some believe it is time to return to what we once were. Others fear what your presence means. Liam swallowed. This was bigger than he had expected. He was no longer just a stranded astronaut. He was a symbol, a catalyst for change in a society that had never known the presence of men. But what did this mean for him? Was he destined to be a relic in a museum, or was there something more to his place on this alien world? Amara stood up, her figure tall and proud. You will stay with us for now, rest, learn, and when you are ready, we will discuss what comes next. There is much to learn for both of us. Liam nodded, though his mind was already racing. There was so much to understand. And as the night settled over the city of Nurun, he couldn't help but feel the weight of his situation. Stranded in a strange galaxy, he had become the only man in a world of alien women. His survival would depend on how well he adapted and how much these women were willing to accept him. Liam spent the next few days in a daze. His body was recovering from the crash, but his mind couldn't stop racing. Everything around him was so strange, so foreign. The people were unlike anything he had ever imagined. Queen Amara, with her calm and authoritative presence, had made it clear that he was to stay with them, at least for the time being. But what did that really mean? He was the only man on an entire planet, and while the women seemed curious about him, he could feel their hesitation. It wasn't just his appearance that confused them. It was his very existence. The fact that he was male, something that had been absent from their world for centuries, left them unsure of how to react. Liam spent most of his time in a grand hall, isolated from the rest of the city, recovering and trying to make sense of it all. The room he stayed in was lavishly decorated, but there was an underlying emptiness to it. It was clear that the women of Nurun lived with a sense of independence and self-sufficiency that Liam couldn't fully grasp yet. They didn't need men, and they hadn't for generations. One afternoon, Queen Amara came to visit him. She entered without knocking, her regal figure filling the doorway. Her presence was commanding, and as always, her gaze was steady and intense. There was something about her that kept drawing Liam in. She wasn't just beautiful, she was strong, wise, and mysterious, and every time she spoke, her words seemed to carry a weight of centuries. "How are you feeling, Liam?" she asked, her voice gentle but firm. Liam tried to stand, but his legs wobbled slightly. "I'm getting better," he replied, though the uncertainty in his voice betrayed him. He wasn't sure how to handle the way these women treated him. It wasn't as though they were hostile, but there was an odd formality between them, something that made him feel like an outsider. "I know this is difficult," Amara said as she stepped closer, her eyes studying him with curiosity. "You've been through a lot, but you must understand. Your presence here is unprecedented. You are not just an accident of fate. There is more to your arrival than either of us can truly comprehend." Liam swallowed hard. "I don't understand," he said, his voice low. "Why is it such a big deal? I'm just a man. There have been men before. I'm just the last one left." Amara shook her head slowly. "No," she said softly. "There have been no men here for centuries. It's not just the fact that you are a man. It's that you are human. There is something different about your species, something that our people have long forgotten." Liam felt a chill run down his spine. He had thought that maybe his presence was just an oddity, something for them to study. But now it seemed as though there was something much larger at play. He wasn't sure if he was meant to be some kind of savior, a symbol, or if he was just a reminder of a long-lost past. But whatever it was bigger than him. Amara continued, her voice carrying a note of hesitation, as if she was unsure how to phrase what she was about to say. "I've studied your history, your people's history, and there are ancient texts on Nurun that speak of a time when men and women lived together in harmony. But it was lost long ago. Our society has flourished without men, but there is something we have never been able to fully achieve. We've built a civilization, yes, but we are still incomplete. Liam didn't know what to say. He had come here expecting to survive a crash, not to become the key to some ancient prophecy or forgotten history. He didn't want to be a symbol. He wasn't even sure if he wanted to stay here, surrounded by people who were so different from everything he had known. "I don't want to be part of some prophecy," Liam said, his voice filled with frustration. "I'm just a guy trying to get back to Earth. I don't belong here." Amara's gaze softened, but there was still a hint of sadness in her eyes. "Perhaps. But you are here, and we must find a way forward." She paused, glancing toward the window as if deep in thought. "I know this is overwhelming, but we cannot ignore the significance of your presence." Liam stared at her for a long moment, unsure of how to respond. The air between them was thick with unspoken words, and for the first time since the crash, Liam began to wonder if he could ever truly go back home. Would the planet's women ever accept him as more than just an anomaly? Or was he doomed to live out his days as a curiosity? That evening, Amara invited him to join her for a walk in the gardens of the palace. The gardens were stunning, filled with vibrant alien plants and flowers that seemed to glow in the twilight. As they walked together, the silence between them felt different from earlier. There was a mutual understanding now, though neither of them fully acknowledged it. They were both navigating uncharted territory. Amara stopped in front of a large tree, its bark shimmering like silver. "This tree," she said softly, "has stood for thousands of years. It is said to have witnessed the rise and fall of civilizations, and yet it remains unchanged, just like Nurun." Liam took a deep breath, trying to make sense of it all. "I don't understand," he admitted. "I'm just a man. Why does all this matter?" Amara turned to face him, her expression unreadable. "Because your arrival could change everything, for better or for worse." The words hung in the air, and for a moment, Liam felt a pang of uncertainty. What if this wasn't just about him getting back home? What if there was something more he had to do here, something tied to the future of this strange world? The next few days were filled with more questions than answers. Liam had been introduced to more of the women who lived in the capital, and each of them was just as fascinated by him as the last. But there was a strange mix of awe and fear in their eyes. They treated him with respect, but it was clear they didn't know how to fit him into their world. One afternoon, Amara called Liam to her chambers. When he arrived, he found her standing by the window, staring out at the city below. "Liam," she began, her voice steady but filled with emotion, "I've thought about what you said, about not wanting to be part of a prophecy, but there is more at play here than just the two of us. This is about our entire planet. You may not see it now, but your presence here could mean something far greater than either of us can fully understand." Liam felt the weight of her words. He had never asked to be the key to anything. He was just a man, a survivor. But now it seemed as though his very survival on this strange world was connected to the future of these women, and maybe even the galaxy. "I never wanted this," Liam muttered, staring down at his hands. "I just wanted to go home." Amara's expression softened, and she stepped closer to him. "I understand, but for now this is your home, and I promise we will figure out a way forward." Liam nodded slowly, but inside he couldn't shake the feeling that his life would never be the same. No matter what happened next, he had become a part of something much bigger than himself. As the days passed, Liam continued to train, learn, and adapt to this alien world. His bond with Amara grew, though neither of them fully understood the direction it would take. All they knew was that the future of Nurun, and maybe even Earth, was at a crossroads, and the choices they made now would determine everything. Days turned into weeks, and Liam found himself adjusting to life on Nurun in ways he never thought possible. He spent much of his time with Queen Amara, learning about her people, their culture, and the strange history that had led them to where they were now. While the city and its people still felt foreign, Liam began to realize that there was a strange sense of peace here. The people of Nurun were strong, capable, and confident in their ways, but they were also deeply uncertain about their future, a future that, it seemed, might depend on Liam's presence. Queen Amara, though always composed, had begun to confide in him more and more. She spoke of the history of Nurun, of the great war that had decimated the male population centuries ago. She spoke of the lost generations, the thriving society built without men, and the painful realization that something vital had been missing all along. It was clear to Liam that Amara carried the weight of this truth. Her kingdom, once thriving, was now standing at a crossroads, uncertain of how to evolve in the face of his arrival. As the days passed, the tension between them continued to grow. Liam wasn't sure if it was the weight of his presence or something deeper, but there was an undeniable attraction between them. They had shared long conversations, but these were always interrupted by the expectations of their positions. Amara was the queen and Liam was an outsider. They both knew the boundaries between them were more than just physical. They were social, political, and perhaps even spiritual. One afternoon, as they walked through the palace gardens, Amara asked him a question that seemed to hang in the air longer than she intended. "Do you miss your world, Liam?" she asked, her voice soft but filled with curiosity. "Your people, your earth." Liam hesitated, his eyes drifting across the strange flora that surrounded them. The gardens of Nurun were a peaceful place, full of vibrant colors and shimmering plants. It was beautiful in its own way, but it was still so different from what he knew. "I miss Earth." "I miss home," Liam replied, his voice tinged with sadness. "But I don't know if I can go back. My mission's over. I don't have anything left to go back to." Amara didn't respond immediately. She kept walking, her long strides purposeful, yet her face was thoughtful. "You say you have nothing left, but perhaps you're wrong. Maybe this world could become your home too." Liam shook his head slightly. "I didn't come here for this. I'm not a part of your world, Amara. I'm just a man." She stopped walking and turned to face him, her eyes searching his face. "And yet you are here. You cannot ignore what is happening between us. You are here for a reason, Liam. I do not believe it is a coincidence." Liam felt a lump form in his throat. He wasn't sure how to respond. What was she really asking? Was she implying that they shared some sort of destiny, some fate that had led him here to this strange, beautiful planet? Before he could speak, the peaceful moment was shattered by the sound of hurried footsteps. A group of women from the royal court approached, their faces serious and urgent. "Your Majesty," one of them said, bowing deeply. "There is trouble in the city. Lady Gira has begun rallying her supporters. She is speaking out against your leadership." Amara's face darkened. Lady Gira was a powerful woman in the court, a noble with her own agenda. While many of the women of Nurun revered Amara, there had always been a faction that opposed her reign. Gira was the leader of that faction, and she had always believed that the planet should return to a more traditional system, a system that included men, something Amara had firmly rejected. "I must go," Amara said, her voice cold and firm, her expression hardening. She turned to Liam, her gaze softening for just a moment. "Stay here for now. I will return shortly." Liam watched as she hurried away, her royal guards flanking her on either side. The tension in the air was palpable. Amara had many supporters, but there were also many who believed she was leading the planet down the wrong path. Lady Gira's faction was growing stronger, and if she succeeded in swaying the women of Nurun to her side, the balance of power on the planet could shift dramatically. As the day passed, Liam couldn't shake the feeling of unease. He had learned a lot about the planet and its people, but he was beginning to realize that his presence had stirred something much larger than he anticipated. Was he simply a pawn in the political games of this world, or was he meant to play a more important role? The evening arrived, and Amara had not yet returned. Liam paced restlessly, his mind racing. He felt helpless, unsure of what he could do in this unfamiliar place. Was there any way for him to make a difference? Or was he doomed to remain an outsider, forever isolated from the world around him? Finally, as the stars began to twinkle in the sky, a messenger arrived, breathless from running. She bowed quickly before speaking. "Liam Carter, the Queen requests your presence at the council chambers immediately." Liam's heart raced. What could it mean? He had never been summoned to the council chambers before. He hurried to follow the messenger, his mind spinning with questions. When he arrived, he found the council room filled with high-ranking women from across the kingdom. Amara was standing at the head of the table, her posture regal but tense. Lady Gira stood on the opposite side, her arms crossed, her expression defiant. "Liam," Amara began, her voice calm but strained, "we are facing a critical decision. Lady Gira has declared that she will lead a rebellion against my rule. She believes that Nurun needs to return to a system that includes men, and she has rallied many of the nobles to her cause." Liam's stomach dropped. He could feel the weight of the situation. This wasn't just about him anymore. His presence had ignited a fire that was now threatening to burn through the very fabric of the society he had found himself in. "You may not be a part of this world, Liam," Amara continued, her voice steady, "but your presence has become a symbol. Whether you like it or not, you have become the focal point of the unrest. Lady Jira believes that if she can control you, she will have the power to shift the balance in her favor." Liam swallowed hard. He had never thought of himself as a symbol. He was just a man who had crashed on a strange planet. But now it seemed he had become something more. He was caught in a battle between two powerful forces, both of whom saw him as a tool to further their own goals. "What can I do?" Liam asked, his voice strained with the weight of his uncertainty. Amara looked at him, her gaze full of both resolve and regret. "You must choose, Liam. Will you stand with me as I try to keep this world in peace? Or will you side with Lady Jira, who believes that Nurun must return to its ancient ways?" Liam's mind spun. He was no politician. He wasn't even sure he belonged here. But the choices before him were undeniable. If he chose to stand with Amara, he might become the catalyst for change on a planet that had lived without men for centuries. If he sided with Lady Jira, he might become part of a return to a system that he didn't understand, and one that could have devastating consequences. The room fell silent as Liam looked at both women, their futures now intertwined with his own. Liam stood in the council chamber, feeling more out of place than ever before. The weight of the situation was settling in, and he couldn't ignore the truth. His presence had become the center of a struggle for power, a struggle he didn't understand. Both Queen Amara and Lady Jira had their own ideas about the future of Nurun, and now, somehow, Liam had been dragged into their conflict. Amara's eyes were steady, but there was a hint of concern behind them. She had always carried herself with confidence, but the political tension in the room was unmistakable. Lady Jira, standing across from her, exuded a quiet but fierce energy. She was the voice of those who believed that Nurun needed men, that the planet's future could not be fully realized without them. "I didn't ask for any of this," Liam muttered under his breath, more to himself than anyone else. The weight of responsibility pressed on him with each passing moment. Amara looked at him, her expression softening for a second. "I know," she said gently, "but your presence here has changed everything, Liam. Whether you like it or not, you have become a symbol. The people of Nurun are looking to you for guidance, even if they don't fully understand it yet." Liam didn't know how to respond to that. He was a man from another world, stranded on a planet that didn't even know what to do with him. What could he possibly offer? He had no political experience, no understanding of their way of life. All he knew was that his presence had sparked a chain of events he could never have anticipated. Jira, however, didn't share the same empathy. Her gaze was hard, her voice sharp. "Your Majesty," she said, addressing Amara with a mix of respect and contempt. "You may think that this man can save us, but I assure you, he is nothing more than a distraction. Nurun was built without men for a reason. Our strength comes from the unity of women. We don't need a human male to show us the way." Liam felt a rush of anger surge through him at Jira's words. He wasn't a tool to be used, nor was he some experiment for them to study. He had his own purpose. He was a survivor, not a pawn, but he knew better than to lash out. The political games here were much larger than him. "I'm not here to take over your world," Liam finally said, his voice firm. "I'm just trying to survive. I didn't choose to be here, but I'm not going to let you turn me into a symbol of something I don't understand." Jira's eyes narrowed, but she said nothing. She had no need to respond to him directly. Her true battle was with Amara, and she wasn't about to lose ground in front of her. Amara, though, stepped forward. "You're right, Liam. We cannot force you to take sides, but we also cannot ignore the influence your presence has on our people. Our world is changing, and we need to decide how we will move forward." The council chamber was filled with tense silence. The women of Nurun, who had once lived without men, were now facing a crossroads. Some believed that embracing the arrival of a human man like Liam could bring about change, a change that might help them evolve. Others, like Jira, believed that the planet's strength came from maintaining the purity of their matriarchal society, where women alone held power. Liam found himself caught in the middle of this conflict. He didn't want to be a part of it. He just wanted to survive, to find a way back to Earth. But that wasn't going to happen. Nurun wasn't like any place he had ever imagined, and now it seemed that his fate was intertwined with theirs. The discussion went on for hours, with Amara and Jira at the forefront, debating what direction Nurun should take. Jira spoke of returning to the old ways, where women ruled alone and men were considered unnecessary, even dangerous. Amara, on the other hand, argued that change was inevitable. She spoke of unity, of building a future where men and women could work together, where strength came from understanding each other's differences. Liam listened, but he couldn't help but feel that none of this truly mattered to him. He wasn't here to decide the future of Nurun. He was just a man in a strange world, trying to figure out what came next. As the meeting came to an end, Amara turned to him, her face a mixture of concern and determination. "I know this is a lot to ask of you, Liam," she said quietly. "But you must understand, your presence has caused a shift. I don't know what that means yet, but it is clear that your decision, whatever that may be, will influence the future of Nurun." Liam stared at her, his mind racing. What choice did he have? Could he simply walk away from this, pretend that none of it mattered? No, he couldn't. As much as he didn't want to admit it, his survival on this planet was tied to the choices he made here. "I understand," he said, his voice low, "but I still don't know what to do. I didn't come here for this, Amara." She nodded, her expression softening. "None of us chose this path, Liam, but we must walk it together or apart. That is the reality now." The days that followed were filled with increasing tension. Jira's faction grew bolder, spreading dissent among the people of Nurun. Riots broke out in some of the cities, and the political situation became more volatile by the day. The Queen's supporters rallied behind her, but even Amara could sense that the pressure was mounting. The planet was on the brink of something, but Liam wasn't sure what. Amara continued to rely on Liam, pulling him into meetings, having him speak to the people, trying to use him as a symbol of unity. He did what he could, but he wasn't a politician. He wasn't a leader. He was just a man from Earth, trying to survive in a world that seemed as alien as the stars. One evening, as Liam walked through the palace gardens trying to clear his head, he saw Amara sitting by the fountain, her face troubled. The moonlight reflected off the water, casting a soft glow on her features. There was a sadness in her eyes that Liam had never noticed before. "You're worried," Liam said quietly, sitting down beside her. Amara didn't look at him immediately. Instead, she stared at the flowing water, lost in thought. "Yes," she admitted softly. "I fear that the choices I've made have brought us to this point. I've been so focused on the future of Nurun that I've lost sight of what's really important." Liam looked at her, sensing the weight of her words. "What is important, then?" he asked. Amara finally turned to him, her eyes meeting his. Your presence here has changed everything. I never expected to feel this way, but now. I am not sure if we can continue without you." The vulnerability in her voice caught him off guard. He had always seen Amara as a powerful queen, untouchable above the struggles of her people. But in that moment, she seemed as lost as he felt. Liam felt a surge of empathy for her. He had never asked to be a part of this world, but now it seemed like his fate was tied to theirs. He didn't know if he was the answer to their problems, but he couldn't walk away. Not now. "I'll help you," Liam said, his voice steady. "But I don't know what the right answer is. I don't know what the future holds. I just know that I can't let you face this alone." Amara's eyes softened, and for the first time Liam saw the weight of the responsibility she carried. "Thank you, Liam," she whispered. In that moment, they both knew that the future of Nurun was uncertain, and the path ahead would be difficult. But they also knew that they would face it together, whether they liked it or not. The sun had begun to set over the palace of Nurun, casting long shadows across the garden where Liam and Amara stood. The weight of the decision that lay ahead was heavier than ever. The political situation had reached a boiling point, and there was no turning back now. Lady Jira's rebellion had gained more support, and the tension between her faction and Queen Amara's loyalists was palpable. The planet was on the verge of a civil war. Liam had never expected any of this. He had never asked to be the key figure in a political struggle. All he had wanted was to survive, to find a way back to Earth. But now, it seemed as though his fate was intertwined with that of Nurun itself. The choices he made in the coming days would shape the future of this world, and possibly the entire galaxy. "Liam," Amara said, her voice steady, but filled with an emotion he couldn't quite place. She looked at him, her eyes searching his face as if she was looking for something more than just an answer. I need you now more than ever. My people need you. Liam nodded, though the uncertainty in his chest only grew. What could he do? He was just one man, a stranger in a world that wasn't his own. He had no experience in politics, no understanding of their culture beyond what Amara had shared with him. He was an outsider, and yet the women of Nurun had made him a symbol of something much bigger than himself. I've never been a leader, Liam said, his voice quiet. I don't know what you expect from me. Amara stepped closer, her eyes never leaving his. I don't expect you to lead, she said softly. But you have something that none of us have, a perspective, a way of seeing the world that is different. You've already shown me that you're capable of making decisions under pressure. I trust you, Liam, and that's why I need you by my side. Liam felt a knot tighten in his stomach. Amara's trust in him was a heavy burden to bear. He had never seen himself as the savior of a planet. He was just a man who had ended up here by accident. But now, the planet's fate rested on choices he wasn't sure he was ready to make. Amara, Liam began, his voice hesitant, I didn't come here to change anything. I didn't ask for any of this. I just wanted to survive. Amara's gaze softened, but there was a quiet determination in her eyes. I know, but survival isn't always enough. Sometimes we have to fight for what we believe in, for what's right. Liam looked away, his eyes wandering across the garden. The once peaceful planet was now on the brink of chaos. He had seen the signs of unrest everywhere, the protests in the streets, the growing divide between the people who followed Amara and those who supported Jira. Nurun was a planet on the edge, and its future was uncertain. I don't know if I can do this, Liam said, his voice rough with frustration. I'm not a hero, I'm just trying to get by. Amara reached out and placed a hand on his shoulder, her touch surprisingly gentle. You don't have to be a hero, Liam, you just have to do what feels right. You're already part of our world, whether you want to be or not, and that means you have a responsibility to help us find our way. Liam met her gaze once again, and for the first time, he saw the vulnerability in her eyes. She was carrying the weight of a planet on her shoulders, and he could feel the burden she was placing on him. But there was something else in her eyes, too, a hope, a trust that he hadn't expected. He swallowed hard. What do you need me to do? Amara gave him a small, almost imperceptible smile. We need you to help me unite the people of Nurun. We can't afford to keep fighting among ourselves. The Zaldor Empire is growing stronger, and if we don't act now, we'll be crushed beneath their forces. We need to show that we can stand together, men and women, all of us. Liam nodded slowly, the weight of her words sinking in. The Zaldor Empire, a powerful force from the neighboring galaxy, had been eyeing Nurun for years. The planet's resources were valuable, and the Zaldor were always looking to expand their influence. If Nurun fell, it would be another victory for the Empire, and a blow to the fragile peace that had been built. I understand, Liam said, his voice steadier now. But I don't have the power to change things alone. I'm just one man. Amara smiled faintly. That's the key, Liam. You're not alone. You never have been, and neither am I. We have to fight this together. The conversation lingered in the air between them, and Liam felt the pull of Amara's words. She was right. He wasn't alone. But he had never been a part of anything like this before. He had never been part of something so important, so life-changing. As the days passed, the situation in Nurun became more dire. Lady Jira's supporters continued to rally, and the unrest grew. The people were divided, and the pressure on Amara to act became more intense. Liam did his best to help, offering advice and guidance where he could, but he still felt like an outsider in this world. He didn't belong here. He didn't understand the politics, the culture, the history. He was just trying to find a way to survive. One evening, Amara called him to a secret meeting in the palace. The room was dimly lit, and the air was thick with tension. Amara's closest allies were gathered around the table, and when Liam entered, all eyes turned to him. The queen stood at the head of the table, her expression grave. We have a choice to make, Amara said, her voice firm. The time has come to decide whether we will stand and fight for our future, or whether we will surrender to Jira's vision for Nurun. Liam felt the weight of her words. This was it. This was the moment where everything would change. The future of Nurun was in their hands, and the decision they made now would determine whether the planet would remain free or fall into the hands of those who wanted to return to the old ways. We need a plan, Liam said, his voice steady despite the uncertainty in his chest. We can't afford to waste any more time. Amara nodded. We've already begun organizing. We'll need the support of the people, and that means we must make them see that our future depends on unity. We cannot continue to fight among ourselves. Liam knew that the road ahead would not be easy. There were too many factions, too much distrust, and too many old wounds that needed healing. But he also knew that this was their last chance. If they failed now, Nurun would be lost to the Zaldor Empire, and that was a future no one could afford. In the days that followed, Liam worked alongside Amara and her allies to unite the people of Nurun. They held rallies, spoke to the citizens, and worked tirelessly to show that the planet's future depended on working together, not apart. It wasn't easy, and there were many moments of doubt, but Liam never wavered. He had come to care for this world and its people, and he would do whatever it took to protect them. The final showdown came quickly. The rallying cry of unity spread across the planet, and when the time came to face Lady Jira's forces, Amara led her people into battle with Liam by her side. The conflict was fierce, but in the end, it was clear that the people of Nurun had chosen their future. They had chosen unity. As the dust settled and the battle was won, Liam stood beside Amara, looking out at the world they had saved. The future of Nurun was uncertain, but for the first time since his crash, Liam felt a sense of belonging. He wasn't just a stranger in a foreign world anymore. He was a part of something bigger, a part of a future that had yet to be written. "Thank you, Liam," Amara said, her voice soft. "We couldn't have done it without you." Liam looked at her, his heart full. "We did it together." And as the two of them stood there, side by side, the first rays of a new dawn broke over the horizon. The future of Nurun was no longer in the hands of the few. It was in the hands of all of them.